The massive crystal chamber on Zarian Prime hummed with energy as beings from across the galaxy gathered for what they believed would be a simple discussion. Ambassador Zethkar of the Draconian Empire stood tall on his scaled legs, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. Around the circular chamber, representatives from the most powerful civilizations in known space took their positions with the confidence of those who had never truly been challenged. The Vorthan collective sent 3 of their finest crystal beings, each one sparkling like a living diamond as they communicated through harmonic frequencies that made the air itself sing. Their bodies were beautiful to behold, but deadly beyond measure, capable of focusing starlight itself into weapons that could cut through planets. They had ruled their sector of space for over 2 million years and considered themselves the peak of evolved intelligence. From the insectoid worlds of Mantara came Queen Vessel Crix, speaking for the great hive mind that controlled billions of bioships across 17 star systems. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns as she communicated, each gesture carrying the weight of countless voices speaking as one. The Mantrans had perfected the art of biological warfare, growing their ships like living creatures and breeding soldiers specifically designed for conquest. The ethereal dominion manifested as 3 shifting forms of pure energy, barely contained within the chamber's reality dampeners. These beings had transcended physical form eons ago and could drain the power from entire fleets with a thought. They spoke directly into the minds of others, their voices carrying the weight of ancient wisdom and absolute certainty. Zethkar raised his clawed hand for silence and began to speak in the common trade language that all civilizations used for official business. Fellow beings of the Great Alliance, we gather today to address a problem that has been growing in the outer rim territories. The species calling themselves humans have been expanding beyond their home system and establishing colonies on worlds that rightfully belong to our established order. A low rumble of agreement echoed through the chamber. The assembled representatives had been monitoring human activities for several years now, watching with growing annoyance as these newcomers spread across systems that had been marked for future expansion by the great powers. What irritated them most was not the expansion itself, but the audacity of a species barely 50 years into space travel daring to claim territory in a galaxy that had been carved up by ancient treaties. Queen Vessel Crix clicked her mandibles in what served as laughter among her kind. These creatures are barely past the point of primitive chemical rockets, and yet they dare to plant their flags on worlds and sectors we have reserved for future development. They show no proper respect for the established order of things. 1 of the Vorthan crystals resonated with a sound like breaking glass mixed with music. Our scouts report that they use crude metal ships with simple fusion drives. Their weapons are projectile-based kinetic systems that would barely scratch the hull of a proper warship. They appear to have no understanding of energy manipulation, gravitic control, or even basic shield technology. The ethereal forms pulsed with amusement as they projected their thoughts. These humans demonstrate all the aggression of a warrior species but lack any of the sophistication that would make them truly dangerous. They fight each other constantly on their homeworld and seem incapable of the unity necessary for galactic dominance. They are, in essence, a minor irritation that has grown beyond its proper boundaries. Zethkar nodded his massive head. Precisely. Why we must act now, before this irritation becomes a genuine problem. The humans have established colonies on 12 worlds and show no signs of slowing their expansion. If we allow this to continue, other primitive species might begin to think they too can claim territory without proper permission from the established powers. The discussion that followed was less a debate than a formality. Each representative spoke of the humans with the same dismissive tone they might use when discussing an infestation of space vermin. The Draconians had monitored human military capabilities and found them laughably primitive. The Vorthans had analyzed human technology and declared it centuries behind even the most basic galactic standards. The Mantarans had studied human biology and pronounced them weak creatures adapted only for their single heavy gravity world. The ethereals had probed human minds and found them chaotic and unfocused, lacking the mental discipline necessary for advanced civilization. Within 2 hours, the decision was unanimous. The human species would be given 72 hours to surrender all territorial claims beyond their home system and submit to proper galactic authority. Any refusal would result in the complete eradication of human civilization. As an example, 2 other upstart species. Ambassador Zethkar was chosen to deliver the ultimatum personally. Using the most powerful subspace transmitter on Zarian Prime, he sent the message to every human colony and ship in space. The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies and in multiple languages, ensuring that no human could claim ignorance of the demand. Thousands of light years away, Commander Jake Sullivan sat in the command center of the USS Liberty, a colony ship carrying 300 souls toward what they hoped would become humanity's 13th world. The Liberty was not a warship by any stretch of imagination, built for long-term travel and planetary development rather than combat. Her hull was thick and practical, designed to protect against cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. During the long journey between stars, Jake was reviewing the latest reports from the other human colonies when the subspace communicator activated with an incoming priority transmission. The signal was so powerful that it overrode their normal communication protocols and forced itself onto every screen and speaker throughout the ship. The image of Ambassador Zethkar filled the main display, his reptilian features made even more intimidating by the formal lighting of the Galactic Council chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority, the tone of someone accustomed to having his words obeyed without question. Attention, humans. I am Ambassador Zethkar, speaking for the Galactic Council and the combined civilizations that maintain order in this galaxy. Your species has been expanding into territories that do not belong to you and establishing colonies without proper authorization from the legitimate governing bodies of known space. Jake felt his jaw tighten as he listened to the alien's words, but he remained silent, knowing that this was likely a one-way transmission. Around him, the bridge crew stopped their work to stare at the screen, their faces reflecting the same mixture of anger and disbelief that Jake felt building in his chest. The council has deliberated and reached a unanimous decision. You have 72 hours to begin the immediate evacuation of all human colonies beyond your home system. Oh? Humans currently residing on worlds outside the Sol system must return to Earth and submit to proper galactic authority. Your species will be assigned appropriate territories commensurate with your technological development and civilizational maturity. The alien paused, and Jake could swear he saw something like amusement in those cold reptilian eyes. Should you refuse this generous offer, the combined fleets of the Galactic Council will take whatever action is necessary to restore proper order. Your primitive weapons and crude technology pose no threat to civilizations that have mastered the forces of the universe itself. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification of what will happen. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Bridge of the Liberty in stunned silence. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. Lieutenant. Commander Lisa Martinez was the first to speak, her voice carefully controlled despite the anger Jake could see burning in her eyes. Sir, should we begin preparing an evacuation plan for the colonists? Jake stood slowly from his command chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. He thought about the families aboard his ship, the children who had been born during the long journey between stars, the elderly colonists who had left Earth hoping to see humanity's future among the stars. He thought about the other colonies, the brave men and women who had volunteered to leave everything familiar behind to build new worlds for their species. Then he thought about something else, something the alien ambassador clearly did not understand about humans. They had never learned how to surrender, especially when their backs were against the wall. From the caves of prehistoric Earth to the battlefields of 2 world wars, humans had always found a way to fight back against overwhelming odds. No. Lisa, Jake said quietly, his voice carrying a steel edge that made several crew members look up sharply. We're not evacuating anyone. Send a message to Earth Command and all the colonies. Tell them we need to talk. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood before the largest holographic display in Earth's orbital command center, watching as red dots representing alien fleets moved slowly but inevitably toward human space. The intelligence reports were sobering but not unexpected. 4 separate armadas had departed from their respective home systems, each one large enough to sterilize an entire star system. The Galactic Council was not taking any chances with what they considered a primitive, upstart species dot around the circular command center. Dozens of technicians worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency of people who knew their civilizations. Survival depended on their actions. The atmosphere was tense but not panicked, which impressed Patricia considering that most of these people had learned about alien civilizations only 72 hours ago when the ultimatum arrived. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Project Chimera," announced Lieutenant Kyle Peterson from the communications station. "Dr. Campbell reports that all systems are online and ready for deployment." Patricia nodded grimly. Project Chimera had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for the past 15 years, ever since the first alien scout ship had crashed in the Sahara Desert. While the public believed that humanity's expansion into space was purely exploratory and peaceful, a small group of military leaders and scientists had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Dr. Roy Campbell appeared on the main screen, his weathered face showing the exhaustion of a man who had not slept in 3 days. Behind him, Patricia could see the massive underground facility that housed humanity's most advanced military research. The complex was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid that orbited on the far side of Luna, hidden from any casual observation and shielded from most forms of scanning. "Admiral, I'm pleased to report that we've successfully integrated alien technology with our existing systems," Roy said without preamble. "The weapons platforms are operational, the shield generators are online, and our new ship designs are ready for deployment. The aliens made a critical error when they dismissed our technology as primitive." Patricia leaned forward in her command chair. "Explain what you mean, Doctor." Roy's expression grew more animated as he warmed to his subject. "The aliens have advanced far beyond us in terms of energy manipulation and exotic physics, but they've also become completely dependent on those technologies. Their ships rely entirely on energy shields for protection. Their weapons are all energy-based, and their communication systems use subspace frequencies that we can now monitor and disrupt." He gestured to something off-screen, and the display changed to show a cross-section comparison between a human ship and an alien vessel. "Look at this, Admiral. Their hulls are thin and light because they rely on shields for protection. Our ships have thick armor plating because we never developed reliable shield technology. Their weapons are designed to overwhelm energy defenses, not to penetrate physical barriers." The implications hit Patricia immediately. "You're saying their weapons might not be as effective against our armor as they expect." "Exactly, and that's not the only advantage we have." Roy's image was replaced by Dr. Susan Blake, the head of Xenobiology Research. Susan looked tired but excited, her red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and her lab coat stained with what Patricia hoped was coffee. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the biological data we've gathered about the species." "In the Galactic Council?" Susan said, consulting a tablet in her hands. "Every single one of them evolved on worlds with significantly lower gravity than Earth. The Draconians come from a world with 0.7 Earth gravity, the Vorthans from 0.5, the Mantrans from 0.6, and the Ethereals transcended physical form so long ago that they have no natural resistance to high-gravity environments." Patricia felt a cold smile spreading across her face. "Which means their ground forces would be at a severe disadvantage in any boarding action or planetary assault. More than that," Susan continued, "their cardiovascular systems, bone density, and muscle development are all adapted to low-gravity environments. What we consider normal atmospheric pressure and gravity would be like trying to function while carrying twice their body weight. Their reaction times would be slower, their endurance would be limited, and their strength would be significantly reduced. The communication screen split to show Captain Alex Turner, whose stealth reconnaissance ship had been shadowing the approaching alien fleets for the past 24 hours. Alex looked like he had not slept since receiving his orders, but his eyes were sharp with the focus of a hunter who had found his prey's weakness. "Admiral, I can confirm Dr. Blake's assessment," Alex reported. "I've been monitoring their fleet, formations and communication patterns. They're maintaining loose formations with minimal defensive screens, and their patrol schedules follow predictable patterns that suggest they're not expecting any real resistance." Patricia studied the tactical display showing the positions of Alex's ship relative to the alien fleets. The Un's shadow was invisible to their sensors, using a light-bending technology that had been reverse-engineered from the crashed scout ship. The irony was not lost on her that the aliens' own technology was being used to spy on them. "What's their estimated time of arrival at our outer colonies?" she asked. 47 hours for the Draconian Advance Fleet, 52 hours for the main Mantaran Swarm, and 60 hours for the combined Vorthan and Ethereal forces, Alex replied. "They're taking their time because they don't consider us a threat." Patricia turned to address the command center as a whole. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have less than 2 days to deploy our assets and prepare our defenses. This will not be a conventional war by any definition. We're facing enemies with superior numbers, superior technology, and millions of years of combat experience." She paused, letting the weight of their situation settle on everyone present. "However, they have made several critical errors in their assessment of human capabilities. They have dismissed us as primitive and weak, they have revealed their technological dependencies, and they have given us advance warning of their intentions." The main display changed to show a three-dimensional map of human space, with defensive positions marked in blue and incoming alien fleets marked in red. "Our strategy will be based on 3 principles. First, we will use their overconfidence against them by allowing them to engage us in situations where their advantages are minimized. Second, we will exploit their technological weaknesses with weapons and tactics they have never encountered. Third, we will demonstrate the one human characteristic that no alien species in this galaxy has ever developed." Patricia looked around the room, meeting the eyes of as many of her officers as possible. "We will show them what it means to fight. For something worth protecting rather than fighting to conquer something we want." Commander Dan Phillips stood up from his station at the Fighter Coordination Center. "Admiral, our pilots are ready to deploy the new interceptor squadrons. The modified civilian ships have been equipped with the Chimera weapon systems and are ready for combat operations." Patricia nodded. "Excellent, Dan. Remember, our goal is not to match them ship for ship. Our goal is to make them pay such a high price for every victory that they begin to question whether conquering humanity is worth the cost." Dr. Campbell reappeared on the main screen. "Admiral, there's something else you need to know about the alien weapons and ship designs. They've been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years. Their ship configurations, weapon patterns, and tactical doctrines appear to be standardized across their entire civilization." "Which means they've become predictable," Patricia mused. "Exactly. They've perfected their warfare to the point where they no longer innovate. They rely on overwhelming force and technological superiority rather than tactical flexibility. They've forgotten how to adapt to unexpected situations, because they haven't faced a truly unexpected enemy in millennia." Patricia felt the pieces of their desperate plan falling into place. Humanity had only one real advantage against these ancient civilizations, but it might be enough. Humans were the only species in the galaxy that had never stopped fighting. While the aliens had achieved galactic peace through superior technology and established dominance, humanity had continued to wage war against itself right up until the moment they reached the stars. Every human military officer had studied the history of warfare from ancient battlefields to modern conflicts. They understood the principles of asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, and the importance of morale and motivation in determining the outcome of battles. The aliens had technological superiority, but humans had something that could not be programmed or manufactured. "All stations, this is Admiral Hayes," she announced to the entire orbital facility. "In 46 hours, we will engage an enemy that considers us beneath their notice. They expect us to surrender or die quickly and quietly? Instead, we're going to teach them something about the species that conquered an entire planet before they ever left their home system." She looked up at the display showing Earth in all its blue and white beauty, thinking of the billions of people below who were depending on the actions of the next few days. "We're going to show them that humans have never learned how to lose gracefully, and we're not about to start now." Commander Ben Carter stood on the observation deck of Proxima Station, watching the last civilian transport disappear into the darkness between stars. The evacuation had taken 18 hours, but every non-essential person was now safely away from what would soon become the first battlefield in humanity's war for survival. Only essential personnel remained: miners, engineers, and the 200 Marines under Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez. Proxima Station had never been intended as a military installation. Built around a massive asteroid rich in rare metals, it served as humanity's furthest mining outpost and a refueling stop for ships traveling to the outer colonies. The asteroid itself was nearly 10 kilometers across, honeycombed with tunnels and processing facilities that had been carved out over 15 years of continuous operation. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up the Draconian advance fleet," reported Chief Engineer Marcus Webb from his position at the main control console. 27 ships in standard battle formation, estimated arrival in 4 hours. Ben nodded grimly. The approaching fleet represented more firepower than humanity had ever seen in one place, but he was not as worried as he probably should have been. The past 3 days had been spent transforming Proxima Station into something the Draconians had never encountered before, a fortress designed by people who understood that sometimes the best defense was making the enemy pay dearly for every meter of ground. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez joined him at the observation deck, her powered armor making soft mechanical sounds as she moved. Amy was a veteran of the Earth Colonial Marines, trained in the brutal reality of combat in hostile environments. Her face was calm, but Ben could see the predatory alertness in her eyes that marked her as someone who had learned to thrive in dangerous situations. "All defensive positions are manned and ready, Commander," she reported. "The mining equipment has been converted according to the technical specifications from Project Chimera. Our people are as prepared as they can be for what's coming." Ben looked out at the improvised weapons that now bristled from every surface of the asteroid. Industrial mining lasers had been repositioned and upgraded with focusing crystals that could cut through armor plating. Ore haulers had been converted into missile platforms carrying warheads that were essentially miniaturized fusion bombs. Even the gravity generators that kept the station's artificial atmosphere in place had been modified to serve as weapons. "Amy, make sure your people understand the tactical situation," Ben said quietly. "The Draconians have superior technology and overwhelming firepower. Our only advantages are that they don't know what they're flying into and they've never fought humans before." Amy's smile was not pleasant. "Sir, my Marines have been studying the intelligence reports about Draconian physiology and combat tactics. These aliens evolved on a world with lower gravity than Earth, and they've been fighting ritual duels for so long that they've forgotten what real warfare looks like. They're about to get a very unpleasant education." The next 4 hours passed with agonizing slowness as the Draconian fleet approached. Ben used the time to review their defensive preparations one final time, checking every system and weapon emplacement personally. The aliens would expect to find a helpless mining station, with perhaps a few security guards. Instead, they would encounter something that no species in the galaxy had ever built, a fortress designed by humans who had spent their entire history learning how to kill each other efficiently. War Commander Scaleth led the Draconian advance fleet with the confidence of someone who had never experienced a true military defeat. His flagship, the Crimson Talon, was a beautiful vessel designed as much for intimidation as for combat. The smooth curves of its hull were covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished blood, and its weapons were arranged in patterns that spoke of artistic sensibility as much as tactical effectiveness. "Approaching the human mining facility now, War Commander," reported his tactical officer. "Sensors indicate minimal defensive capabilities. A few point defense weapons and basic shield generators. This should require no more than a single bombardment pass." Staleth nodded with satisfaction. The humans had chosen to make their stand. At this pathetic outpost, rather than surrendering as civilized beings should, their defiance would be crushed quickly and efficiently, serving as an example to any other human colonies that might consider resistance. "All ships assume bombardment formation," he commanded. "We will demonstrate the price of defying the established order. Target their power systems first, then their life support. We want survivors to carry word of what happens to those who refuse the Council's generosity." The Draconian fleet moved into position with the precise coordination of warriors who had practiced these maneuvers for centuries. Each ship took its assigned place in the formation, weapon systems charging with the distinctive whine of exotic energy being focused into devastating beams. This was how civilized warfare was conducted, overwhelming force applied with surgical precision to achieve quick victory with minimal damage to valuable infrastructure. "Beginning bombardment in 3 minutes, War Commander," reported the weapons officer. "All targeting solutions confirmed." On Proxima Station, Ben watched the alien ships positioning themselves exactly where his defensive planners had predicted they would. The Draconians were following their standard tactical doctrine without deviation, treating this like every other minor rebellion they had crushed over the millennia. They had no idea that humans had been studying their methods and preparing for exactly this scenario. "All stations, this is Commander Carter," he announced over the station's communication system. "The enemy is moving into attack position. Remember your training and trust your equipment. Today we show the galaxy what happens when someone makes the mistake of threatening human beings." The first draconian energy beam struck the stations. Outer armor plating with devastating force, vaporizing several tons of metal in an instant. The blast lit up the asteroid's surface like a miniature sun, and sensors throughout the station registered massive damage to the outer hull. But instead of penetrating to the vital systems inside, the beam simply carved a deep groove in the thick armor that human engineers had installed over the past 3 days. Staleth frowned as he studied the tactical display. The humans should have lost main power with that hit, but their energy signatures remained strong. "Increase firepower to full intensity," he ordered. "These primitives have better armor than expected." The second bombardment was more intense, with all 27 Draconian ships focusing their weapons on specific points of the station's defenses. Energy beams that could have cracked a moon struck the asteroid with coordinated precision, filling space with superheated debris and electromagnetic radiation. Any normal space station would have been completely destroyed, but Proxima Station had been built by people who understood that sometimes you had to absorb terrible punishment before you could strike back. "Minimal damage to primary systems," reported Marcus Webb, consulting readouts that showed the true extent of the station's defenses. "Outer armor is performing exactly as designed. The mining tunnels are channeling the energy away from critical areas." Ben allowed himself a cold smile. The aliens' energy weapons were incredibly powerful, but they were designed to overwhelm energy shields and breach thin hulls. Against the thick, crude armor that humans had layered over every vital system, they were far less effective than their designers had intended. "Time to show them what human weapons can do," he announced. "All batteries, open fire." The response from Proxima Station caught the Draconian fleet completely by surprise. Industrial mining lasers, upgraded with focusing crystals and powered by the station's massive fusion reactors, reached out across space with beams of coherent light that could cut through armor plating like tissue paper. The beams were not as elegant as Draconian energy weapons, but they were devastatingly effective against ships that relied on shields rather than armor for protection. The first laser struck the Crimson Talon amidships, cutting through its ceremonial armor and deep into the ship's vital systems. Atmosphere vented into space as the beam carved a path from the hull to the engine compartment, and secondary explosions began to ripple through the vessel's superstructure. "Impossible," Scaleth snarled, as damage reports flooded his command center. "How can primitive mining equipment penetrate our defenses?" His answer came in the form of 3 more mining lasers that targeted his ship simultaneously, their beams focusing on structural weak points that human engineers had identified from studying captured draconian technology. The Crimson Talons. Elegant curves became a liability as the focused energy found every joint and seam in its armor, opening the ship like a flower of metal and flame. The modified ore haulers launched their improvised missiles in coordinated volleys, sending dozens of fusion warheads toward the alien fleet. The Draconians tried to intercept them with point defense systems designed to stop energy weapons and conventional explosives, but the human missiles were too crude and too numerous for their sophisticated defenses to handle effectively. "War Commander." Scaleth managed to transfer his command to another vessel just before the Crimson Talon's reactor went critical. The news of the Draconian defeat at Proxima Station spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel, carried by the quantum communication networks that connected every major civilization. In the crystal spires of the Vorthan Collective, harmonic frequencies buzzed with disbelief and anger. The insectoid hives of Mentara vibrated with a fury that could be felt across star systems. The energy beings of the ethereal dominion pulsed with emotions that had not been experienced in millennia. Hive Queen Zarathex floated in the bioneural fluid of her command organism, her consciousness linked to 10,000 bioships that formed the largest military swarm in Mantaran history. Around her, the living walls of the flagship pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that reflected her rage. The humans had not simply defeated a draconian advance fleet. They had humiliated one of the galaxy's oldest warrior cultures with mining equipment and crude tactics. The Council underestimated these humans, she communicated to her sub-queens, through the neural links that connected every Mantaran to the collective consciousness. They are not the primitive creatures we were led to believe. They fight like the ancient predators of our homeworld, using cunning and brutality where civilized beings use honor and technology. The response from her swarm was immediate and overwhelming. 10,000 voices speaking as one, each bioship a living extension of the Hive Queen's will. They had been bred for war, grown in the spotting pools of Mantara, specifically to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers and biological efficiency. No enemy had ever withstood a full Mantaran swarm assault. We will demonstrate to these humans the difference between destroying a single fleet and facing the combined might of a species that has perfected the art of biological warfare, Zarathex declared. They will learn that their crude weapons cannot stand against opponents that can adapt and evolve during battle itself. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbital command center, Admiral Patricia Hayes studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The intelligence reports from Captain Alex Turner's reconnaissance ship painted a terrifying picture of the approaching enemy forces. The Mantaran swarm alone outnumbered the entire human space fleet by more than 50 to 1, and that was just the advance element of the alien response. "Admiral, the Vorthan crystal dreadnoughts have joined formation with the Mantaran swarm," reported Commander Dan Phillips from the Fleet Coordination Center. "Their combined firepower is estimated to be capable of sterilizing every human colony." Simultaneously, Patricia nodded grimly as she watched the red icons moving inexorably toward Earth's solar system. The victory at Proxima Station had bought them time and valuable intelligence, but it had also provoked the Galactic Council into committing their main battle fleets. This would not be a limited engagement against an overconfident advance force. This would be a fight for the survival of the human species. "What's the status of our defensive preparations?" she asked. "All available ships have been recalled to Earth orbit," Don replied. "The Un's Defiance is ready for deployment with the new Chimera weapon systems. The lunar defense platforms are online, and the asteroid belt mining stations have been converted to missile batteries according to Dr. Campbell's specifications. Patricia studied the defensive arrangements with the eye of someone who had spent her entire career preparing for battles that she hoped would never come. Humanity's total space fleet consisted of 47 ships of various classes, most of them converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. Against the approaching alien armada, they were hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. Captain Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the Inn's Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The Defiance represented everything that human engineers had learned from studying alien technology, combined with the practical experience gained from centuries of warfare on Earth. Her hull was thick and angular, designed to absorb punishment rather than avoid it. Her weapons were crude but devastatingly effective, and her crew was trained in tactics that no alien species had ever encountered. "All stations report ready for combat operations, Captain," announced Lieutenant Commander Tony Clark from the tactical station. "The new shield generators are operating at full efficiency, and the Chimera weapon systems are charged and ready." Rachel nodded as she watched the tactical display showing the approaching enemy forces. The aliens were maintaining their standard formation patterns, apparently convinced that overwhelming firepower and superior numbers would be sufficient to crush human resistance. They had not learned the most important lesson from the Battle of Proxima Station. Humans were most dangerous when they appeared to be defeated. "Tony, activate the civilian ship coordination network," she ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten a species that turned asteroid mining into an art form." Throughout the solar system, ships that appeared to be simple cargo haulers and passenger transports began to reveal their true nature. The past week had seen the most intensive military conversion project in human history, as every available vessel was equipped with weapons and defenses reverse-engineered from alien technology. Fuel tankers became missile platforms, passenger liners became troop transports, and mining ships became mobile fortresses. Dr. Susan Blake coordinated the Biological Warfare Division from her laboratory on Luna, surrounded by samples and data that represented humanity's growing understanding of alien physiology. The Mantaran bioships were living creatures, bred for war but still vulnerable to the kinds of biological agents that humans had been developing since the first crude chemical weapons of ancient Earth. "The viral agents are ready for deployment," she reported to Admiral Hayes. "The Mantarans have never encountered Earth-based pathogens, so their bioships have no natural immunity. We've modified several common viruses to disrupt their neural networks without causing permanent damage to the ship's biological systems." Patricia allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The aliens expected humans to fight like civilized beings, using advanced technology and established tactical doctrines. Instead, they were about to encounter warfare as practiced by a species that had never stopped looking for new ways to kill its enemies. "Deploy the biological weapons on my command," she ordered. "And Dr. Blake, make sure your people understand that we're not trying to commit genocide here. We're trying to survive." The first phase of the battle began when Commander Don Phillips led his squadron of modified civilian ships in what appeared to be a desperate attempt to slow the alien advance. His force of 12 converted cargo haulers accelerated toward the Mantaran swarm at maximum velocity, their improvised weapons charging for what looked like a suicidal attack against impossible odds. Hive. Queen Zarathex observed the approaching human ships with something approaching amusement. The pathetic little vessels were barely larger than her swarm's scout organisms, and their crude kinetic weapons posed no threat to bioships that could regenerate damage faster than it could be inflicted. This would be over quickly. "All forward. Elements, prepare to engage," she commanded through the neural links. "Demonstrate to these humans the futility of their resistance." The first exchange of fire lit up space between Earth and Mars as thousands of bioweapons struck Dan's squadron. The alien projectiles were living creatures, bred specifically to penetrate enemy hulls and consume everything they found inside. Against energy shields and advanced defensive systems, they were devastatingly effective. Against the thick, crude armor plating that humans had installed on their converted cargo ships, they were far less successful. The bioweapons struck the hulls and began trying to eat their way through layers of metal and ceramic that had been specifically designed to resist biological attack. The ships took damage, but they did not die quickly as the Mantarans expected. Dan's response caught the alien swarm completely off guard. Instead of trying to fight a conventional space battle, his ships began releasing clouds of what appeared to be simple atmospheric gases. The Mantarans dismissed it as a primitive attempt at creating a smokescreen, not realizing that they were flying their living ships directly into a biological weapon that would have been considered a war crime by any civilized species. Dr. Blake's modified viruses spread through the Mantaran formation with terrifying efficiency. The bioships began to experience neural disruptions as their organic computer systems were infected by pathogens that their immune systems had never encountered. Individual ships lost coordination with the swarm, drifting out of formation as their pilots struggled to maintain control of vessels that were literally becoming sick. "Impossible," Zarathex transmitted as reports flooded in from throughout her swarm. "How can primitive chemical weapons affect our biological defenses?" Her answer came from the second wave of human attackers, led by Captain Rachel Stone aboard the UNS Defiance. The human warship accelerated toward the largest Mantaran biocruisers with weapons blazing, its crude kinetic cannons and improvised missile systems targeting the weak points that human intelligence had identified in alien ship designs. The Defiance was not trying to win a traditional space battle. Instead, it was executing a strategy that no civilized species would have considered. The space around Earth burned with the fires of 1,000 dying ships as the greatest battle in galactic history reached its climax. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood in her command center, watching tactical displays that showed human forces locked in desperate combat against an enemy that still outnumbered them by more than 20 to 1. The Mantaran swarm had been disrupted by biological weapons. The Vorthan crystal ships were reeling from kinetic impacts they had never been designed to withstand, and the ethereal beings were discovering that human technology was too primitive for their energy-draining tactics to work effectively, but the aliens were adapting, and their sheer numbers were beginning to tell. Human ships were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced, and even the most optimistic projections showed that Earth's defenses would be overwhelmed within hours. Patricia had always known that this battle could only end one way, but she had never intended for humanity to win through conventional warfare. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Colonel Morgan," announced Lieutenant Kyle Peterson from the communications station. "He reports that the infiltration teams are in position and ready to execute the final phase." Patricia felt a cold smile cross her face as she thought about the small groups of humans who had been secretly infiltrating alien territory for the past month. While the Galactic Council had focused their attention on the approaching military confrontation, human special forces teams had been using captured alien technology to penetrate deep into enemy space. The aliens had never considered that humans might attack their core worlds because such a strategy seemed tactically impossible for a primitive species with limited space travel capabilities. Colonel Steve Morgan crouched in the maintenance tunnels beneath the primary shipyard complex on Draconia Prime, the heavily fortified capital world of the Draconian Empire. Around him, 12 other humans in captured alien environmental suits worked with the quiet efficiency of soldiers who knew that the survival of their species depended on the success of their mission. "All charges are in place, Colonel," reported Sergeant Linda Parker, consulting the technical specifications that Dr. Campbell had provided for sabotaging alien industrial facilities. "When these fusion bombs detonate, they'll take out the main construction yards and the orbital defense platforms." Steve nodded as he checked his chronometer. Similar teams were positioned throughout Draconian space, ready to strike at shipyards, communication centers, and command facilities that had never been designed to resist attack from within. The Draconians had built their empire on the assumption that their technological superiority made them invulnerable to primitive species. But they had never considered what would happen if those primitive species learned to use alien technology against its creators. "Execute in 60 seconds, he transmitted to the other teams. "Remember, we're not trying to conquer anything here. We're just making sure that nobody else will either. On the crystalline world of Vorthen Prime, Lieutenant Commander Helen Brooks led her team through the harmonic resonance chambers that controlled the collective's galaxy-spanning communication network. The Vorthens had built their civilization on perfect coordination between crystal beings separated by vast distances, but their system had never been designed to resist sabotage by creatures who understood the physics of harmonic disruption. Placing the resonance disruptors now, she reported to her team. When these activate, every Vorthen crystal in this star system will be singing the wrong frequency. Their communications will be chaos for months. The Mantaran hive worlds presented a different challenge, but human ingenuity had found a solution. There as well, Captain Gary Allen and his biochemical warfare specialists had spent weeks studying the neural networks that connected every Mantaran to their collective consciousness. The aliens had never developed defenses against biological agents that could disrupt their hive mind, because no other species had ever thought to attack them in such a fundamentally immoral way. Viral agents are dispersed throughout the primary breeding pools, Gary transmitted as his team prepared for extraction. The Mantarans won't be coordinating any military operations for the next several years while they rebuild their neural infrastructure. The ethereal dominion posed the greatest challenge because energy beings were difficult to attack with conventional weapons. But Master Sergeant Carol Turner had discovered that beings made of pure energy were vulnerable to electromagnetic pulse weapons that could disrupt their coherence patterns. Her team had spent days infiltrating the energy cores that maintained the ethereal home dimension, placing devices that would cause catastrophic resonance cascades throughout their power grid. EMP charges are synchronized and ready for detonation, she reported. This should cause enough disruption to force them back to their home dimension for emergency repairs. Back in Earth orbit, the final phase of the space battle was reaching its crescendo. Captain Rachel Stone guided the battered Un's Defiance through a formation of Vorthen crystal ships, her weapons targeting the harmonic resonance points that held their living rock hulls together. The human ship had taken terrible damage, but her crew continued to fight with the desperate courage of people defending their home. All human vessels, this is Admiral Hayes, Patricia announced over the Fleet Communication Network. Execute Operation Endurance in 10 seconds. Show the galaxy what happens when someone makes the mistake of threatening a species that has never learned how to surrender. The synchronized detonations began on Draconia Prime, where Steve Morgan's fusion bombs tore through the industrial heart of the Draconian Empire. Shipyards that had been building warships for millennia vanished in balls of nuclear fire, taking with them the infrastructure necessary to maintain the galaxy's most powerful military fleet. The orbital defense platforms that protected the capital world crumbled as their supports were severed, leaving the proud Draconian homeworld defenseless for the first time in its history on Vorthen Prime. The resonance disruptors activated simultaneously, sending harmonic shock waves through the crystal structures that form the backbone of the collective civilization. Every crystal being in the star system suddenly found themselves unable to communicate with their fellows, their perfect unity shattered by frequencies that made coherent thought impossible. The technological marvels that had taken millions of years to build began to collapse as their crystal components sang discordant notes that tore them apart from within. The Mantaran hive worlds experienced a different kind of catastrophe as Dr. Blake's biological weapons spread through their neural networks like a plague designed specifically to attack collective consciousness. Individual Mantarans found themselves cut off from the hive mind for the first time in their lives, struggling to function as independent beings without the constant guidance of the collective. Their bioships, suddenly without central coordination, began attacking each other in confusion as different factions of the swarm received conflicting orders. The ethereal dominion suffered the most spectacular collapse as their energy cores destabilized in cascading failures that rippled across multiple dimensions. Beings that had transcended physical form found themselves forced back into lower states of existence as their power sources failed. The pocket dimensions where they had built their civilization began to collapse, forcing emergency evacuations. to back up realities that had not been used in eons. Ambassador Zethkar, now a prisoner aboard the Ian's Defiance after his command ship had been destroyed in the battle, watched through the bridge viewports as reports of the galactic catastrophe reached the remaining alien fleets. His reptilian features showed an expression that humans had never seen before, the complete bewilderment of a being whose entire worldview had been shattered in a single moment. "This is impossible," he said in the common trade language, his voice carrying a note of desperation that had not been there before. "You cannot have achieved such widespread destruction with your primitive technology. Your species has been in space for less than a century." Captain Rachel Stone, her uniform torn and bloodied from the battle, turned to face the alien ambassador with eyes that reflected the cold fury of someone who had watched friends die defending their home. "You made the same mistake that every bully in human history has made, Ambassador. You assumed that being stronger meant you were smarter." She gestured toward the tactical displays that showed the chaos spreading across the galaxy as the alien civilizations struggled to deal with the simultaneous collapse of their infrastructure. "You thought we were primitive because we hadn't conquered the galaxy yet, but we weren't conquering anything. We were learning. Learning how your technology worked, learning where your weaknesses were, learning how to turn your own strengths against you." Admiral Patricia Hayes appeared on the bridge's main communications screen, her image being broadcast to every surviving ship in both the human and alien fleets. "To the representatives of the Galactic Council, this is Admiral Hayes of the United Earth Space Command. Your fleets are defeated, your infrastructure is in ruins, and your civilizations are collapsing. But this war can end right here if you're willing to listen to reason." The response came from Queen Vessel Crix of the Mantaron Swarm,